Welcome to Slippery Slope Part 11. Enjoy! Aran didn't know what to feel as they announced Kita's arrival at the hospital. Relief would have been the logical response, but at this point he was too worn out, too numb. A small voice at the back of his mind reminded him that it meant nothing that Kita was here. It could have still been too late. They hadn't been given any detail of his injuries, any inkling of information that might tip the scale in his favor or not. He could have anything, from a couple deep scratches and hypothermia to a devastating head injury or internal bleeding. The uncertainty kept him on edge, but he didn't have the strength anymore to express his concerns. In a very literal sense, he didn't even have the strength anymore to be concerned. His thoughts were tainted with worry, but in reality he was sitting in the uncomfortable hospital chair with Atsumu to his left, staring at the opposite wall. The soft patting over Atsumu's arm had long ceased as the ace kept more and more caught up in his head. Family of SemiShiraKawaGata? He hadn't even noticed the nurse enter, but Atsumu next to him visibly shrunk as he let himself collapse against the taller. Taichi threw them an apologetic look as he passed, before quickly following his partners. Aran couldn't blame him. If their positions were reversed, he'd be at Kita's side in a matter of seconds. But they weren't reversed. There was still no information on how Kita was doing, and the only hope he could cling to was that if they had been found at the same time, Kita must have been more stable at first glance to be transported after the other two. Even though he wished his boyfriend could have been in the hospital as quickly as possible, this was still something, a tiny slither of a chance. Taichi hurried to keep up with Shirabu and Hayato. They rushed through the hallways, following the nurse. They stopped at one of the countless white doors, and Taichi wished he had paid attention to the station they were on. He knocked slightly on the door while opening it, revealing a small group of people surrounding the hospital bed on the inside. The relatives are here. Once inside, Taichi's eyes immediately were drawn to the bed. His breathing faltered as he saw the warm brown eyes looking back at him. Semi was awake. A dry sob got caught up in his throat, and he felt his eyes fill with tears of relief. Semi smiled at him, and while he was stunned speechless, Hayato brushed past him and rushed to Semi's side. He stopped by his bed and carefully took in the extent of his injury. Ada, are you okay? What happened? Semi's smile faltered a bit before turning sheepish. Well, I don't know. Shirabu next to him frowned, finally turning his attention to the attending doctor still standing by. What tests have been done? And what are the results? What is his prognosis? Kenjiro, let the poor man breathe. They made sure I'm not dead. I count that as a win. Shirabu flinched a little at his choice of words, and Taichi could see how his hands clenched into fists. He probably knew better than any one of them that just because he appeared fine now didn't mean it would stay that way. It's alright, I was getting to that. As I already explained to you, Semi-san, the head injury was the most concerning aspect. Upon arrival, we immediately did a CT scan to assess the extent of the injury. We noticed a moderate TBI with evidence of brain contusion, or in other words, bruising on the brain. We have given him medication to prevent further swelling in that area and will monitor it closely. To Taichi, well, understandable, this all sounded like medical gibberish. He didn't know how serious that was or sounded, but Shirabu next to him nodded along with an expression he knew well from when he studied for an important exam. But he seemed to get calmer with the information provided, so maybe this wasn't too bad. Considering the placement of the injury and possible implications, the treatment will be monitored alongside a neurologist. He nodded towards his colleague, a woman with long black hair standing beside him. Furthermore, you've shown signs of hypothermia, which could be managed well by giving a warm infusion to start the rewarming process. The cuts on your arms and legs have been cleaned, and antibiotics were administered to prevent infection, considering they couldn't be cleaned properly until now. The only thing we can determine for certain are the neurological implications. You seem to be suffering from post-traumatic amnesia as a result of the traumatic head injury. At the word amnesia, his head snapped up and his heart clenched. He looked at Semi again, who seemed to have taken this fairly well. He had taken Hayato's hand, and Taichi couldn't decipher if the tension was the result of a reassuring squeeze or an attempt to hide his discomfort. It'll take time to determine the full extent and best plan of treatment, but we'll monitor his condition to make sure adequate care is provided. The silence weighed heavy in the room as they processed the information. Taichi could feel his throat tightening. To him, this sounded like he might be stable now, but the consequences could be worse than they knew. It sounded like nothing was certain yet. I'll leave you to talk. I'm sure there's much to discuss, but please, take it slow. Of course. Thank you. His voice sounded strained, and he didn't look at them as they left the room. Meanwhile, Hayato had grabbed one of the chairs and pulled it closer to Semi's bed. How are you feeling? Better, now that they have given me a bunch of pain meds. He laughed, though as much as he tried to hide it, Taichi could see the pain flashing over his face at the movement. Don't strain yourself. Head injuries are... Just relax. If you need anything, I'll tell you. Thanks. After all, I have my personal doctor. What should I be worried about? He smiled, but his eyes turned glossy, and he didn't fight it as the first tear spilled. Shirabu seemed shocked in place, while Taichi was battling his own tears. Semi was hurt. He needs comfort right now. Taichi shouldn't be the one demanding it. The silver-haired let himself sink back into the pillows. Slowly, the tension in his muscles ceased, and he gulped. Shit. I can't even remember what happened, but I know that I was fucking terrified. He let out a shaky laugh and looked at them a little uncertain. I was terrified of never seeing you again. It broke down his walls further, and Taichi cried. A hand flew up to cover his mouth and stopped the sounds from escaping, but too late. Semi's gaze zeroed in on him, and there it was, the soft smile. What are you doing there? Come here. And you, Kenji, you still owe me cuddles, you know? Soon enough, the musician was surrounded by them, and Taichi sobbed openly into the sheets, but Semi weakly rested his hand on his hair, playing with the auburn curls. They said amnesia. I was so scared you might have forgotten us. Never. I could smash my head against 1,000 trees and it wouldn't be enough to erase my memory of you. Don't you dare try that. If you ever go missing again, I'll implant you a tracking chip. He chuckled. That's fair, but only if Hayato also gets one. Hey! Good idea. I'm not that bad. You are. Thank the gods you are. He laughed again, and Taichi's heart fluttered with the same relief filling the silver-haired's voice. It was the sweater, you know. That ridiculous orange sweater. I used it as a sign for our location, and... You remember? Semi faltered. He didn't seem to have noticed. Yeah. I guess I do. Bits and pieces. That's a good sign, right? Shirabu nodded. Suddenly, he let himself fall into one of the chairs. You three are gonna be the death of me. Only because you always worry too much. Semi's grin was met with a stunned silence and an incredulous look from the young doctor, slowly turning into faint anger. You in particular. This is the second trip to the hospital within this month. They said you had cuts on your arms as well. Did the one on your hand reopen? No, not really. It hurts again, but that's it. Taichi let out a sigh of relief, suddenly very tired. He rested his head on Semi's thigh, listening to their hushed voices, and would have almost fallen asleep. But soon after, or maybe it had been a while, it was hard to tell, the nurse came to send them home. He didn't want to go. Not after all the worrying and guessing, and not after looking into Semi's eyes, clearly pleading them to stay while he tried to be strong. They promised they'd return every day until he was allowed home. Taichi hugged and kissed him goodbye, like he wasn't able to that fateful morning, but it still stung. As much as he wanted, or rather had to, trust the doctors, it was hard putting Semi's life into their hands. Part of him wished Shirabu could be the one tending to him, which was irrational considering he was still in training. The best thing they could do was wait, and he was slowly but surely getting sick of waiting. Thank you so much for watching to the end. I hope you liked it. If you did, consider leaving a like and consider subscribing, because then you get to see all the future parts, and that would be great. Yes. Also, I'm sorry for the more infrequent uploads recently. Most of you will already know stuff has been going on, life has been a bitch, but I am back and we will get back to weekly uploads. Yes. Special thanks to my nerdy neckos who supported me throughout this very difficult time, and obviously to all of you who continue to watch my videos. It means the world to me. If you can rewatch some of my old content, that will be great right now, but if you can't, that's also fine. Now I hope you have a wonderful and amazing day. Bye!
Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some good, some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you wanna be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be